Shizabde, hop on the beat!
Welcome back to another JoJo chapter review. This time we're taking a look at chapter 39 of the JoJOLands titled Underwater to the Island of Hawaii Part 1. Last time we got to the conclusion of the last stand battle and learned a ton of new information about the lava rock and the mysterious new enemy faction with ties to the US government. On top of that, we were introduced to the new and terrifying light rod stand. For this month, our first thing to mention is actually on the chapter cover, with the tagline telling us about the eagerly awaited return of the 5th member. Of course, this is referring to Charming Man, who has been absent for all of Act 2 so far. It's funny that they put this here though, since while his return is alluded to in this chapter, he doesn't actually make an appearance here. We start the chapter with a moment between Usagi and his mother, who they have just rescued from the enemy stand user. Usagi tells her that what's going on right now isn't her fault, and he swears to bring back Tori and their family's money. The group make their way towards the underground parking lot as per Meryl's instructions in the last chapter. Dragona stops for a bit to tell Jodio she's sorry about everything he has had to go through for her sake. Jodio contradicts this, however, by saying that while he does live a life in the shadows, he and Dragona are still moving towards a goal. He says that they are on a radiant path that shatters the absurdity of the world, and he finishes by saying that they will climb higher, get the lava rock, save Tori, and get rich in the process. This is a whole lot to go over in just a few pages, so let's slow down for a minute. First, I do just want to say that Dragona's tearful apology to Jodio here sets off like 10,000 alarm bells in my head about her dying at some point. Like, we've seen this happen with JoJo characters for years, where they get a moment of them expressing their feelings about their goals and future, which is really being done to strengthen the blow of their eventual deaths. Of course, my radar might just be off on this, or this might just be good character writing making me more attached to Dragona, and as a result more afraid of the character dying. What I think this scene is most of all is a sort of mission statement for the protagonists, and it's one of those pages I can see myself returning to whenever we need a better understanding of Jodio's character. Jodio is very much a character split between light and darkness, even down to his own name. In a way, I see similarities with Giorno, where he embodied Dio's personality but directed to the side of good. Araki seems to be exploring that idea further though, since unlike Giorno, who is a kind of perfect character, Jodio possesses many outwardly negative traits. But despite that, his determination to move forward puts him on a bright path. These lines in particular about the radiant path call back to an idea that has appeared all across the series, from the heavy focus on the flow in JoJolion and the golden path of the True Man's World in Steel Ball Run, and the general idea established through the first 6 parts of the righteous path being favored by fate. This of course all stems from Araki's own writing philosophy of a golden path that the characters naturally progress along. The JoJOLands expands on this idea with its focus on the mechanisms which come together to make up the absurd contradictions of human society. Here Jodio says that even as they are living in the shadows as criminals from society's point of view, their goal is just, and so the path to that goal is strong enough to shatter the systems built up against them. The group arrive at the parking lot, disguising the camera feeds and turning off their phones to avoid detection. As I predicted last time, it is revealed that Dr. Roberts is waiting for them. He was Meryl May's private doctor that appeared in the last arc to sew her fingers back on. They climb into his van for him to reattach Usagi's foot. The group barrage him with some pretty funny questions all at once, like asking if he knows about stand users and if he's Meryl May's lover, but he rebuffs them completely here. Jodio goes on to speculate about Rohan's code to the lava rock's location, theorizing that since Rohan said Jodio is his #1 fan, the code must be hidden in Pink Dark Boy in a way that only a true fan could figure out. He realizes that Rohan saying he had a deadline on the call was hinting that the code would be included in his newest chapter. He goes to turn on his phone since he needs to see if the chapter was already released due to the difference in time zones. Immediately after this, noises are heard on the roof and they see that the light rod stand is outside. Dragona wonders how it could have found them when Jodio didn't even turn on his phone. We see the stand use its ability again, much in the way it did on Mundra in the last chapter. Bumps appear along the stand's surface and holes are blown through the object it's touching, in this case the van roof. It comes crashing down into the van where we see that only Dr. Roberts is inside. He looks on in horror with the stand in front of him as it feels around with its foot to find the bag that the protagonist's phones are inside of. After smashing the phones, the stand seems to ignore Roberts and flies away. While the stand didn't do too much this time around, I feel like we've learned even more about how it may work. Dragona says that she didn't get the sense that a user is outside, and therefore it must be a long-range stand. The stand is also visible to Dr. Roberts. Now, he was pretty evasive to the gang's questioning earlier, so whether he is a stand user isn't technically known, but the fact that he seemed to have no way of defending himself here reads to me as him not having one. So that would mean that the light rod stand is physically bound, and therefore visible to non-stand users. We also got a bit more confirmation on how the stand tracks its targets. In the last chapter, the stand appeared to hone in on Mundra's ankle monitor and then killed him after making contact. In this case, the stand appears to have been tracking the gang's phones, and when it reached the phones without finding its target, it floats away. Interestingly though, the phones had been turned off, and Dragona specifically says that despite Jodio taking it out, he hadn't actually switched it on. We should keep in mind, however, that modern cell phones can actually still be tracked even when switched off, through the same Bluetooth low energy technology that AirTags use, which is how you can find your lost devices. When the characters switched off their phones, we can see them placed into a kind of peculiar looking bag. Based on how it looks, I think this is actually one of those signal blocking fabric sleeves. When Jodio took his phone out of the bag, even though it was switched off, that allowed it to be targeted by the stand. I think it being able to do this with the phones off was intentionally done to signal to us that the enemy has a lot of resources at their disposal for tracking them down. We move on to see that the gang had already escaped, using a small submarine Meryl provided for them in the sewer system below. Jodio remembers that Rohan's chapter releases tomorrow, and that 5 AM on the island of Hawaii is midnight in Japan, meaning they'll be able to read it. We cut back to Roberts, who is completely freaking out about what he just went through. In a flashback to just before the gang left, Jodio tells Roberts to contact Charming Man, and let him know about what just happened. And if he doesn't, then the enemy is eventually going to come after him. And the chapter ends with Roberts continuing to freak out. Like I said, we got a ton of new stuff this time around, with a big scene laying out the main themes of the part, and us learning some more clues as to how the new enemy operates. A big part of this chapter is the foreshadowing of Charming Man's return, and presumably Roberts is going to somehow deliver a message to him to be waiting to help the gang as they arrive at the island of Hawaii. Charming Man and his missing brother are of course one of the biggest hanging plot threads left from the last arc, and honestly I'm pretty interested in seeing where he's going to end up going as a character. Obviously he started off as an antagonist and ended up working well with the group. However, we also have to remember that time he pretty cryptically alluded to the gang betraying each other if they try to get rich with the lava rock. So some aspects of his character are still up in the air, especially once we learn more about the people of his village who seem to have some rock human-like characteristics. Overall, this is one of those in-between chapters before the next fight really begins. I'm expecting that we'll see something big next month, with it being the last chapter before Araki's annual hiatus, which usually happens in October. Of course, we'll also have the return of the Steel Ball Run anime to tide us over until he's back. If you want to keep up with new videos, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. You can also join the Hum and Beat Discord to be notified about new uploads and chapter releases. Finally, I'd appreciate if you help support the channel on Patreon or by becoming a YouTube member. All supporters get featured in the credits and can submit viewer questions, which I go over in my main videos. It's thanks to your support that I can continue making these videos full-time. Thank you for watching. This is the part of the video where I thank my $5 and up patrons and members. Thank you to Doorbell, Crayon, RigoVids, Pumpkin Doge, Sponge Cake, Cakext, Feliciano Rabaja, Christian McDonough, Pulse Dog, Rob Goliath, Gold, Red Hot Mayonnaise, Zenkai, Keenan, Saint Bobo, John Garcia, Crank and Plank, Fran Studios, Shin Megami Tensei Film Reviews, Griffiono, Fiddlehead, Justice, Joel Marchins, Danilo K, Kali, Javier's Milk, Billy the Corgi, Time Lord, Moist Daddy Tom, Daisuke, Artist 9398, Monkey 15, Conti Goat, Holy Peanut, Negef, Pluto of Pluto, As 2004K, Tony Was Alive, Trankrom, Slush Zero, and Joverny.